budget matrix is the most common type of budgeting tool people use. Plural is matrices. So if you hear somebody say budgeting matrices, they mean more than one matrix. There are multiple types. Okay, a matrix is just a rectangle of information consisting of rows and columns. So a spreadsheet, tables, charts, things like that. And the size is called an order. And the size is the number of rows and the number of columns. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows. And then I have 1, 2, well, 12, 13 columns. So this would be a 7 by 13 matrix. Not too bad? Okay. This first type is called a budget checkoff matrix. I personally don't find these to be terribly useful. But what you do is you put a check on the months that you have to pay these things. So you know every month you're paying over-the-counter medications. January you don't have as many expenses as say you do in April or June. December has the most. That just sort of gives you an idea of when things occur. But it doesn't give you the amounts. And that's why I don't find it terribly useful. But some people maybe have those amounts in their head all the time, and so this would work for them because they could look at this and say, oh, $600 or something, you know. I can't do that. But budgets are very personal. You have to make a budget that works for you, not for anybody else. I have known people that the way they budget is they don't use a checking account or bank account or whatever. They put cash in envelopes, and they have different envelopes: rent envelope, electricity envelope, food envelope. But you know what I mean? They have all the different envelopes, and when the money's out of that envelope, they can't spend. Like if they have an entertainment envelope and they spend all the money out of that, they're not allowed to go in the other envelopes, you know? If that works for you, then that, as long as you're budgeting, that was what works for you. I make a list. My budget is a list, and I have the same list every month, and then I go through and I check it off as it's done. That's how it works for me. For some people, this checkoff matrix would work like this. My list has dollar amounts. It's not like this. Then you have the expense matrix, where actual dollar amounts are included. Okay, this is also known as a frequency. Because you just have a check for times the expenses appeared. Okay, so we had that on the front. We had the budget checkoff matrix. And this is an expense matrix. Okay, now you can see, to me, this is a more useful matrix because it has actual money. So I know this is 230, this is 120, 480, etc. So I know how much the expenses are. Now this is an annual listing, and an annual listing like this will help you make a monthly budget, because something that occurs once a year, you can split up into all of the months. So you're only paying a little bit of it at a time, and it's being put away. Which it's easier to budget. See, for example, health club dues are $600. It would be easier to budget $50 a month for those than $600 all at once in September. Other ways that people represent budgets are pie charts, also known as a circle graph. And you get divided into segments that represent percentages. They look like a pizza slice. Okay. Um, we have line graphs. Uh, line graphs are really good because they depict changes over time. So line graph, if you do your budget in Excel. No? No. I can go over it a little bit with you.
I'm very proficient with computers, and I just don't understand
like this. Guys, line graphs are good for changes over time. Bar graphs are good for comparing categories of data because each bar is a different category, and so you can quickly look across and compare the categories. And then you have a budget line graph, and this compares two categories on a line. Okay. Typically, what you're doing is you've got two lines on the graph. Typically, you have two categories of expenses. So you can add up the two to equal your income. So you might have two categories of expenses. You might have budgeted versus actual. So let's say you budget, I'm allowed to spend $50 this month on entertainment, but then you actually spend $55. You might keep track of things like that, budgeted versus actual, so that you can see where you need to make changes. Things like that. So this allows you to compare two categories at once on the same, trending over time on the same, you just different color lines. Any questions? Create a year-long budget check-off matrix. A mortgage is monthly. That means we check it off every single month. Okay. Utilities are monthly. Sanitation is quarterly. Okay, that's 4 times a year. Now we're going to start with January, April, July, and October. I'm doing, it's 4 times a year is every 3 months. So if it happens in January, it'll happen again in April. And I just picked January as my first month just to start it. Semi-annually, this is twice per year.
What is sanitation?
Sanitation's your garbage. You pay for sewer and you pay for garbage. Now, depending on where you live, either the sewer and garbage will be on one bill and water's on another, or water and sewer's on one bill and garbage on another, or all three come on the same bill. But sanitation is the garbage men that come and pick up. That does cost money. If you live in an apartment, it's included in your rent, but if you live in a house, you have to pay to have garbage picked up. Otherwise, you have to take it to the dump yourself. Okay, insurance, we're going to say semi-annually, so January. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and July. And internet is semi-annually, so why don't we move it to February so we don't have to pay it on the same month as the thing. Our landline telephone is monthly. Cell phone is monthly. People still have landlines. If you have young children, it's actually very good to have a landline because if they need to dial 911, it does. No, you don't. April and May only. Or sorry, April through September only. And that makes sense because your grass doesn't grow as much in the winter in certain parts of the year or country. Florida, it doesn't matter, your grass just grows. But other places it's snowing here, so they don't have to pay for gardens. Snow, November, January, and March. Well, not really here, but if you live up north. Food, hey, guess what? You have to eat every single month. Did you know that? No. Yeah, it's true. Child care every other month beginning in February. And vet expenses are semi-annually, so we'll do January and June. Okay. We have a circle, and the circle gets divided in half, and you are breaking it up using different radii. Each pie piece is called a sector. Okay? This little bit in here is called the central angle. 100% is equal to 360 degrees. Okay? So what happens is, let's say you're budgeting, and let's say you want to budget 10% for, I don't know, electricity, and 50% for, that's really high, nothing's 50%. 25% for rent, and 15% for food, and 30% for car transportation, so that would be like your insurance, your gas, everything, just your whole transportation budget. So where am I? I'm at 80 right now, and then 20%, we'll just say miscellaneous, okay? To figure out how big of a pie piece this is, we're going to take that percent of 360. So 10% of 360 is 0.1 times 360, so that's going to be 36 degrees. And it's going to be 90 degrees. Let me just double check that. I think that's right. Yeah. And then 15% is going to be 54 degrees. That's 54 degrees, not 540. Which one? 30%? Car.
No, that's miscellaneous.
This miscellaneous. I'm just picking out numbers. Yeah, you really should put a miscellaneous or an other section into your budget, because things come up that you don't expect. You should have money set aside for them. Like, yeah, or you get a ticket, or you drop something heavy on your foot and you have to run to the emergency room, or central care or something, or birthdays that come up that there's always going to be some unforeseen expense during the month that you weren't planning. So here's how he constructed this chart. He said household was 40%. 40% of 360 is 144 degrees. Okay, it's also a little less than 50%. So if we're looking at a circle and you're constructing it, and let's say you don't have a compass or a protractor, so you can't measure the degrees exactly. Well, this line right here across the center of the circle is 50%. You can't read that. 50%, half a circle. And then this line right here, each of these sections is going to be 25%. Okay. 40% is going to be more than 25 but less than 50. So, here-ish would be about 40%. Okay. Or if you have a compass and a protractor, you can actually make the measurements and draw it. Does that make sense? If you don't have one, that's okay, as long as you write in here 40%, so that I know that that's how much it is representing. And it can't be, you can't draw a piece this big and say this is 40%. Okay, this is not 40%. 40% is a little less than half. Got it? So you have to be, that does not have to be 100% accurate, but it has to be close. It has to be feasible. Okay. This is not 70%. Got it? Good. Any questions about how to do that? The other way we can do this, let's say we don't have percentages. Okay, this whole thing is equal to $800. And what they're doing is they're doing a transportation budget. You can have a pie chart that represents your whole budget, like all of your expenses, and your sections can be transportation, rent, food, or you can make a separate little pie chart for each that gets split up. But if we look at this, I'm going to take this right here and I'm going to bring it out like that, so that kind of gives me my 50% line. So that tells me that this is about 25%. So without having actual numbers, I can say they spend about 1/4 of their budget on fuel. Okay.
Why all this stuff from there? Why would they put you on your vacation?
Well, perhaps it depends. So let's say you live in New Jersey, but you commute to New York City. You would drive from your house to the train station, and then you would take the train station into the city. People do that. But, like if you have, or let's say you're taking the Sunrail to downtown Orlando, but you live in Lake Mary, but we only have that one Sunrail station, so maybe you drive from your house to the Sunrail station, take the Sunrail into Orlando and back. So you would still have fuel. Plus, or maybe you take the train or the bus to work all the time, but then you spend your weekends driving around the country in your car. You know what I mean? Like, not I don't mean country like the whole country. I mean like the countryside. Okay. The train and bus, how much do you think that looks like comparatively to the quarter? Okay, I've got a 20. I've got a how much? 25. Well, the 25 is going to be this much right here. And that's going to be a little smaller than that, right? So they spend around 20%-ish on the train and bus. Maybe. You can see that they don't spend very much money at all. They spend the least on car wash. You can say insurance, repairs, and parking. Are about equal. Okay, like, you're making kind of educated guesses based on the picture. You don't have exact numbers, but you can say that these things are about equal because the pie pieces look about the same size.
So if we're close, we get it right.
Yeah. Yeah, what you couldn't say is they spend the most money on car wash.
What is that, is that a number before N or and at least?
Sorry, my pen was messing up on that one. It's spend at least the least on car wash.